All right. How's it going, everybody? My name is Artie. I'm the frontman for Theskeletoncrew. Today, we're going to be breaking down this entire massive project that is Major Arcana. There are two versions of the song, and before I get into it, I just kind of want to talk about how I even got to this step. So obviously, I'm a huge fan of The Strokes. They've been my favorite band for the longest time, and originally, they had a song called Automatic Stop. And some artist by the name of Cat, C-A-T-T, made their own version of Automatic Stop, and I just loved how they transformed this, alternative rock song into a symphonic kind of masterpiece or whatever. And that inspired me to create Minor Arcana. And I wanted to do the same thing. So Minor Arcana being that Strokes rock song, and Major Arcana being the alternative version of that. And I just, when I got the idea, I just started cooking with riffs for Minor Arcana, and then now we're here. The song is released now. It'll be in the description below, and you guys can stream it, both versions. We've got the orchestra version that we're going to look at first, and then we're going to go into the official version with Marianas vocals on it. Everything will be linked down for their socials as well, socials for Theskeletoncrew and all that stuff. So we're just going to go over sounds real quick. This is going to be the main sound. I'm kind of going to go one by one of how we do things here, or how I arranged it. And forgive me for rambling. There's just so much information that's like on the screen. There's a lot of things that we can go over. But essentially, I took 3 days to do the whole song, or 3 sessions, I should say. The first session is to create all of the different sounds that I wanted to use. But I feel like my biggest strength as a musician has been working with orchestra, or at least like in the orchestra mindset. I've never played a violin, a viola, cello, but I feel like when I am able to, mix them and make them here, I'm able to capture the drama of emotions, it just sounds to me like I'm able to construct things a lot faster. So the first session was literally to construct sounds. We start off with this. It is this warm pad. And that is this Juno right here that I'm using. It's obviously like a VST of it. Just a Juno warm pad. Since I don't own a Juno, this is like the best alternative to it. I love the sound that this makes on the lower frequencies, so I just kind of like worked around that, and I made this being more of the bass fundamentals, if that makes sense, since I don't really have that much bass in here. What I do have for bass, and it comes in, as you can see, only in certain spots. And this bass is this one over here. This one is by Heath Holmes. I believe they're the ones that made like all of these Ableton packs where you could just, emulate other aspects of a Juno. And there's like tons of them. And I forget where I even got this, but I know it came in a folder, and I know that there's somebody that put it out there if you wanted to like have an Ableton version of the Juno 106. In any case, this is what this sounds like. And everything is frozen right now just so that I can save on CPU. That's literally the only thing. It just makes it easier so that I can just load up the project like that, and we're good to go. Going on to that, the only thing that's routed is going to be this warm pad. This right here, this is the only thing that's routed to anything. So this warm pad is going into here, or should I say this is receiving information from the warm pad, and I put it on the end, so anytime it plays, you'll hear it like this. It's like this higher part that kind of makes it more full, mainly in the higher register, since I already have the low kind of taken care of. And then I have this as well, a lot more present. And yeah, moving on from there, we've got the main rhythm section. Again, this one, if I unfreeze this, we've got the Illustrator pad, and everything here you can just download from Ableton packs. And they all sound like this, I believe. That's the main one I use instead of that one. So I use just this E-piano detune. And I wanted to choose sounds that just sounded like unique and different from each other. And interlocking them was like the most fun I've had constructing this whole thing. So we've got our synths. We've got this, Stardust. Just blast in here and there. You can kind of hear how it like fills in on the sides there naturally. Looks like it's an operator. Oh no, I forget what this is called. Like I don't know if it's the wavetable probably. We've got this vocal coalition. Like I said, I took a whole one whole session to do this, and I forget how long the session was. I think it was like I don't know, half a day or something like that. Once I get in it, I just get in it. Well, we already did that one. There's this Juno lead. There we go. Little things like that. Now we move on to our orchestra section. So obviously Ableton has their own orchestra sections that you can just download. It's not gonna be how do I say this? You can definitely tell that it's a digital modeling of it, but these are the ones that I was able to find that are, the most convincing or whatever. And even then, you have to kind of tweak things a little bit to just make it sound as best as possible. Since I've never played, with orchestra instruments, I don't know what they're actually supposed to sound like, but I found these ones and they sounded good to me. There's that main viola. And to this day, I don't know the difference between a viola and a violin. I don't even know what a cello looks like. You can point it out to me and I'm like, that looks like a violin, but I have no idea. I just know that it sounds cool and I like the sound. So yeah. There's that. We'll move on to the viola section. And then we'll get to this cello up here in a second in red, because that's just the whole thing. Had to balance it out. So when I first constructed this, I had no idea that you actually, in a real orchestra setting, you have about 16 or so, I forget the number, but it's an outrageous number like that, of just violins playing the harmony section, and then like 20 other playing the rhythm section that really makes it full. All of these, there's so many like pieces of information that I just didn't know when I was constructing this to make it sound like a real orchestra. But for what I found and the minimal instruments that I was able to choose, I feel like it was as full as I can get it, especially with the synths in there. That's all subjective, obviously, but I feel like it was full. Here's this is the viola section, staccato. Like the bass is very, very sparing in here. I have this. Just kind of adding some rhythm with the double bass. But our actual bass is actually going to come from this, the 909. And that 909 is actually going into our return chain, which I'll kind of show here real quick. We have the Valhalla, vintage verb. I don't think it's doing anything special. It just has a longer decay, stuff like that. We've got this 8-ball is what makes all the difference. So, we saw that. Just does that. And then I experimented with, hey, what happens if I run it through a delay? And then I put it through here. And I guess it's that rhythm feeling, and it makes it pretty wide and spacious. So I thought that was interesting. You got the low right here, then you got those high things going on the sides there. And that's just going through this echo stereo. That's it. Nothing fancy, and then I just kind of put it to what I thought sounded nice. And then something I did here was to add this kick boom to it. So without it, and then with it. There you go. So something to just bring out the center of the bass and then widen it out. There's this kick loose. I really made a huge difference from this, and then getting the kick boom. All standard preset stuff. Nothing crazy. But yeah, so there's that, and now we move on to the biggest headache that I've ever had in constructing music. I mean, there was in Isaac Anubis, there was this thing that were frequencies stacking up on top of each other that were making it very difficult to, as you're listening to the song in Isaac Anubis, these frequencies that were clashing that sounded like there was a bell in there. I don't know how I was able to create an artificial bell sound in that song, but I removed it, and that was like a huge headache. I remember doing that for months. But now, in this case, as I was saying before, these are not perfect, and they're not going to be as authentic. To someone that isn't trained in orchestra or doesn't know, like me, I thought this was fine. This was what the old cello sounded like. Here's the attack and release, all that stuff. And then my buddy Evan pointed out that, hey, these are actually, it's not about the velocity, but something's off, and we were trying to figure out what was going on. So we listened to a lot of orchestra pieces that had violin in there and cello and all that stuff. And we realized that this attack actually, so it's how long, I'll play you this one, and you'll see like it's still hitting the notes and in a very respectable time, if that makes sense. But now it's smoother, like as if someone was actually playing it. And this is the secret to this entire cello section. This is what took me the longest to release this song. Even at the last day where I was finally done with the mixing, putting in Mariana's vocals in it for the official version, this was the thing that took the longest. And I couldn't figure out what was going on. Is it the automation, or is it the velocity in these things? Obviously, I wanted the velocity to be louder, or, you know, reach a certain peak to stand out more in the mix in certain sections. But it wasn't that. It was actually this playing in conjunction with the velocities once you have it in the mix, and then this attack. So I would say whenever you construct something like this, it's better to just put it in the mix. Don't worry about automating anything, but put it in the mix first. Make sure you can hear it where you want it. Work with the velocities second to have parts that you need to stand out, like over here. So obviously it makes things louder, but it also makes things sharper. It makes it like as if you're hitting it harder. And then if you do that in tandem with the attack, depending on what parts you need to be faster or whatever, you know, that those are the parts that you can, you know, either make it slower or faster. And I realized that whenever you want things to go faster, obviously you turn down the attack, and it's a balancing act. Obviously you don't want it to be all the way down at 35. It just sounds super sharp like this. You know, versus this. And then you got reverb over here. Look, don't pay attention to that. It sounds a lot more smoother, a lot more, you know, it feels like a person's actually playing it, you know, as we do it. And then as we go through here, you know, I'm just literally trying to figure out this automation. I realized for certain parts where the notes are sustained a lot longer, if you actually put the automation, you know, put it way down to 35 or 0.35, it actually comes in a lot quicker, and it actually like sustains the notes just fine. Just glitch, you know. And then I also had to play around with, do the notes come in on the 1, or should I make them come on a little bit sooner, depending on where I had all that stuff. So you could see that like there's so many complicated things to this whole thing, but this is the thing that took me the longest, of like, why can't I get this cello to sit in well and all that stuff. Literally the last thing that took me forever. And the only reason I have this old cello here is just for reference, for what it sounded like before, and then I can use that to reference this. And originally I did split up this new cello into 2 sections, a fast section of a cello and then a slow section. And then I realized I could just combine it all together if I just automated the attack. So there you go. Little things that you learn because, you know, dummies. I have it panned here at 48, but then I put it to true 48 is what I call it. Because like, even though it's, if you can see here on the bar, we'll put it over here. Something I learned, that even though you can have things panned at 48, like that, you could actually do a true 48, which is here, and you see how much space we just saved there. I call that the true 48, even though it's already panned there. True 48. And that could be true to if you had a pan 25 here in Ableton. I put a utility on there, and then I can actually push it past that point where it's supposed to be at the true 25 or whatever. It's a little trick that I learned a long time ago, self-taught. Literally everything here is self-taught, YouTube videos or whatever. If you find anything useful with that, you can just drop a comment down below. Say, hey, I didn't know that. Cool, awesome, whatever. Moving on. Let's go over the return tracks. Everything here is pretty standard. The upright piano has the Valhalla and a little bit of the dots, the 8-dot ball. Kind of give it some rhythm. It's not really playing anything fast, just holding down notes. Look at that. And then this new cello, if you see here this L, Evan actually pointed out to me that if I create a, you know, things should live in a space, and he says that like this wooden hull is a really good representation of how woodwind instruments or orchestra instruments could sound on a stage performed. So obviously I put it here on the return track, and then I put all of the orchestra instruments onto there. I just sent them out. And the way I mixed this was I put the loudest ones, I made them barely in here, and the quietest ones I put them more in here. So you can kind of see by loudness or whatever. And I'm playing it in a section where it barely has it, but you get the idea. That's how I mix that in. If I had more things into each individual group, I'll just kind of mix it by ear and go from there. As far as that goes, I think everything else here is pertaining to the vocals of what I did to those. Let's just go over, let's go over the mastering chain real quick. I got this UAD distressor, probably one of the greatest plugins I've ever gotten in my entire life. I always say that if something sounds good, you don't have to, if something already sounds good before you put anything on the master, and it's like, well, now what we're doing is just really refining, if anything, that it should stay sounding good. Once you start putting your compressors and your limiters on here, you shouldn't really mess with the fundamental sound of it, So here's this. Just a little bit. You'll see it peaking because we don't have our limiter on there. Just add some exciting to it. Something to excite it. We've got this chain right here. The mastering chain, I made sure not to touch any of these except for the highs. A little bit of overdrive, a little bit of stereo enhancements. That's really it. And then with that one on. We're just bringing out what we need from this track. And obviously I use the spectrum analyzer as we're doing this as well. Saturator, we've got BB tubes. Turn it down a little bit so we're not clipping, and then a final limiter. Man, I love this song. I'm over obsessed with this song. When I first made the mix, I made constructed the whole thing in one session, and then I took another session to actually mix it, put it all where it wanted to be and all that stuff, taking things in and out. But that was a lot of fun, literally just constructing all this during that second session was just crazy. I was just going nuts, putting things in and out, routing things to different spots and all that stuff. And I got it to be in a really good spot. Now that I showed you that, let's hop over to the Major Arcana full version. And we're back. So now we are in the folder of the full version of Major Arcana. And hopefully this should apply to all of you. It doesn't matter what program you're using. Hopefully you're able to translate what I'm saying into your own DAW. To me, Ableton is just the one that I started on. It's the one that makes the most sense to me. It doesn't mean it's the best. It just makes the most sense. But hopefully you can take something from this and apply it to any of your projects if it even makes sense to you. I don't know. If you even think hey, that's not how I would do it. And if it's not, please drop a comment below, because it's really rare for people to tell me any critiques to my work so that I can grow as an artist, a producer, mixing engineer, all this stuff. I rarely get any input. In any case, enough of that rambling. Let's move over to this. So I put everything, all the instruments into this group. And I did a couple things to it. So not only did I make it wider, I also, if we look at this, I've got two different compressors here to stock, just to duck and start making space for Mariana's vocals. So I made it here in the center, and this is, or not the center, but around 1.8K, kind of where their vocals live. Depending on if it's a male singer, female singer, and what range there are, you'll have to just listen to, their vocals and figure out, you can grab an EQ8, you can grab a spectrum analyzer, but just grab something where you can visually see where their vocals are at and then just apply it to that. So now it's ducking ever so slightly with the higher ratio, at 6. And then on here, I did the mid and sides. So you see this, whoops. Boosted on the sides what I needed, to kind of work around the vocals, if that makes sense, and boosted what I thought were the higher frequencies of the instruments. And then I took out here in the mids where the vocals were at. Literally, we're just making space for Mariana's vocals. Moving on to this. This took 3 sessions just for the vocals to get them in. The first session was to get them in the studio and then just kind of play around with vocal placement, articulation, all that stuff, and then figure out what we actually liked for takes. And the second session was to actually come back and refine everything Third session was just for harmonies, and we just knocked those out right away. But it took a month just to get them in here and all that stuff. You know, they live a very basic life too. They're also independent artists, so they have a bunch of stuff going on as well. But the mix was done like, I don't know, except for the cello, because I kept coming back to that. But the mix was done like in the third, fourth day or whatever. To break down these harmonies, we took, these are just kind of duplicated. So what you see down here from H123 or 1, 2, and low, they're just duplicated down here. And then I just kind of stacked them. 3 of the harmonies to the left, hard panned, and then the other harmonies, same exact ones, just duplicated to the right panned. And nothing crazy with these. Barely did some, just got a little bit of EQ in here. Something that I found in the first recordings that I thought sounded really good, there was this frequency right here. I don't know if you can hear that. It's like, it's super sharp, but we were using an MXL 990 large diaphragm condenser mic in a space like this, not treated. In my living room, it has a lot of reflections that were right next to a window as well. And I didn't know that that's what's causing this higher frequency. It sounded so, like the vocal performances on the first time we did the recordings that I thought sounded great. It was mainly like how they sang it. The articulation was on point. But the more I tried to fit it into the mix, the more I kept hearing that high frequency, and the more like I tried working with taking it out, and the more it just kept messing up with the vocals, and I'm like, I can't work with this. So they came in, I got a brand new microphone, I got the Rode NT1, and then we treated everything so that, you know, we can get this performance on there. And even still, I was able to find this performance, or this little spot right here, and that's throughout the entire vocal. So over here, I had a glue compressor over the master, but let's go to this actually before we touch any of that. Let's unfreeze this and kind of show you what I did here. So this is the main vocal. It's called the new vocal take, and then we'll go back to the harmonies here in a second. But I put the key where it's supposed to be in. I don't remember using Lydian. I thought I had it in general. I don't remember doing that, but in any case, I corrected the vocals, and I like how the real-time waves, it makes it smooth. You can really like get really nerdy with it, or just laid back and barely correcting the vocals. But I think no matter how good you are, you definitely need a correcting tool like that. And Evan has Melodyne, which we did take the vocals to Melodyne, but you can get through all the fine little details of an entire vocal line and really like chop it up and get it to be as perfect as possible, but it's very time consuming. With this Waves one, you just set it to what you need it to do, and then it's good to go. Anyway, here, pretty simple, just roll off at 100, took out that harsh frequency. This is one of the best plugins I've ever gotten as well, or second to the Distressor. The Schnaps one adds that preamp emulation on there. Just boost the highs. Since we're kind of taking a little bit there, we kind of boost them. Rolled off some lows, but also boosted, I think, 2 decibels around 110. And then I cut out 80, so we're just kind of keep cutting things out. And how this colors the sound is really nice. I like how this is, it's very versatile. We've got this LA2A, just for holding it out as we go here. C6 to control the bottom end, and right here, this frequency, I wanted to duck at that specific frequency again, so we have this this one right here doing that at that specific frequency. Yeah, around like 1,000 or 10,000, I should say. De-esser, so I was kind of playing around with this depending on if it was really bad around this point or here, and I just decided to do the whole thing from 9,000 up. That's where I decided to do it, and it's just attenuating the vocals there. Let's hear it real quick with it on, all that stuff.
Heart of darkness, all alone.
Hell yeah. Pretty straightforward. I had an RVox on here, but I decided to take it up because I feel like the RVox is heavy compression. I feel like it just didn't need it. The Poog Tech, it's just kind of boosting the lower frequencies at 100 and boosting the frequencies here at 12K, and then attenuating. There's a really good video of what this actually does, what the Poog Tech or just like the clones of the Pultecs are actually doing, and I didn't learn that until after this, but now that I know, hey, it still worked. It works great. It sounds great. Right here, BB tubes on the main vocals just to bring out more of the, I think this is attenuating the highs and this is attenuating the lows, and then you got different types of that. And took off all the bass relief, like just boom. That's really it. Like all of these things just to really spice up the vocals. And then in here we have a mid-side EQ, and I brought in front and forward 2 decibels where I feel like the vocals live, around 2K. Or
Heart of darkness,
yeah, the highs.
all alone.
I just kept messing around with it until it sounded nice, and then there you go. And then overall just brought it up to decibels here. And after all of that, I like to do all of the, how do I say this, like my main mixing gains in here, and then having all of these at 0. Once I actually am done transitioning from the mixing to mastering phase, I will automate these now so I can visually see it on here without having to like go inside the box, inside this or whatever, and like dial it in. I can actually just go here. It's a lot faster for me. That's just a me thing. Anyway, the double vocal, I just took a different vocal since I think we did like 12 takes just to get the main vocal, and then there were other takes that sounded really good, and I'm like, oh well, they're already singing it in the right articulation, the right way. I can just grab those and make a double out of it, so we don't have to come in for an additional studio session. I already have that ready to go. So it's a different take, but it's something that's really close to this. And over here in our doubled effects, it's actually heavily layered. Ducked here, the lows, rolled it off. I didn't use a de-esser or an RVox for these because I feel like this one didn't really need it that much. But the main focus of this was to get it to sound as crazy and as, I don't know, alternative as it could sound. I like how there's so many different artists that do this where they layer so many different effects on their vocals and how it sounds. And I wanted to play with that as a song kind of transitions. So we kind of start the song with harmonies and a little bit of, the doubled vocals. When we get to the first chorus, it's just the vocals by themselves. A little bit of harmonies here and there. As we start transitioning to verse 2 and then the chorus, the doubled vocals start to become louder. And then our original drive vocal take, if that makes sense, starts to become quieter, and this starts to become more present. And I wanted it to have that effect that as you're listening to the song, the vocals are changing, they're adding more effects, and it's becoming more intense as we kind of go through here. Here's what this sounds like altogether. Well, let's play the doubles first.
Heart of darkness, all alone.
Pretty cool. So I already had all of this made the first time that they came over to work on vocals. I already started making the chains, putting it all together, but then I had that problem where like, oh my God, the chains sound great. All the effects sound great, except for the vocals they're just out of control. There's just so much that I couldn't do. But everything was ready. All they had to do was just come back another time, record the vocals, and then I could just plop them in. I already had it ready to go, got all the effects to sound where I wanted them to sound or whatever. And I just played with them. Once I think that it sounded good where I wanted it to sound like, I just moved the automation. With the automation, you bring up the volume. You also bring up the volume of the return tracks. And then I just kind of played around with that. And I think overall, I got it to be in a really good space that I wanted it to. And then their harmonies here, I didn't do anything crazy. I just added snaps on here. Just kind of something subtle. Put a C6 on there, even though these didn't really need it, because they're more of the harmonies that like you don't really. How do I say this? They're gonna be on the sides and they're gonna be heard, but they're not as prominent. They're not supposed to be as prominent. But I put a chain on here and it's sounding really good. Brought those harmonies to life. But yeah, it's like that's subjective. You can play around with these and see like how much treatment you want to put your harmonies in. And even then, what I found was that the harmonies are great as they are, but I wanted still to layer more harmonies on top of that. So instead of them coming in to do like 4 or 5 different types of harmonies and even making harmonies, I remember we had to like really figure out where we wanted the harmonies to go. Did we want them to go up or a semitone down? All that stuff. It's super complicated for making these harmonies. That I just grabbed the doubled over here. I grabbed this, I just put it down here. I wanted to make sure it was different from this in certain sections to be different or whatever. And to sound really good, where they could be doubles. Before I go to that, I put the waves harmony on here. And I made some artificial harmonies. Hard corrected. Oh, I went too fast on that. Hard corrected that. And then I just put the key on there. And then I chose that. I don't know really what this does, but like this chord generator thing. And then I just put a couple effects on here just to really make it sound crazy.
Heart of darkness,
I think it sounds really cool.
all alone.
And I should say I did do this before they came in to do harmonies because I wasn't sure if I was going to even be able to get them in the studio again. So I'm like, you know what? Let's just see if I can try to make some harmonies on here. But these sound super artificial. They should just be used for taste. If you can get the real thing, use the real thing because you have so much more control over that. And as you can see, this is really complicated. After doing all that, we made space for the vocals here, and then the vocals, we brought in the parts that we wanted to bring out the most. After all of that, at the I think it was like the second to last session, Evan came over, and I told him, you know what, go crazy. I want you to mix this the way you want to mix it. It's just a fun session. You just come in here and have at it. Just, what would you do for this? Because I feel like I got it pretty good. And he had a suggestion of putting a parallel audio rack or whatever. You with the dry vocals, but under here you have some really crazy and insane reverbs on here. On here we flip the phase, and then we just kind of put different reverbs on here. And I'll just show you what it sounds like with it on. And this is already I already have insane amount of effects, and we're about to go over those here in a second. But
Heart of darkness, all alone.
Super subtle. I don't even think it needs it. But you can play around with that if you really wanted to make this crazy and automate that stuff. So I just left it on there. In the space though.
Heart of darkness.
Everything together.
All alone.
Anyway, there's that. Moving on to the actual return tracks. So these first three were for the instrumentals, and now we move on to A, B, C, D. Here we go. So I like to have 2 different reverbs. I forgot who said this, but if you have one reverb right here in front, pre-delay could be at anything from 3 to 0 or 0.1 or whatever. It goes down to 0.50. A short reverb that is present, but it doesn't even have to be wide. It just has to be wherever your vocals are at. It's just supposed to be right here in the front and center, and to decay really fast. Just something they can grab onto. This is super crazy. And I wanted to sound crazy with these vocals, with those return tracks as well. It's just insane. But yeah, experimenting with that, being more up front. And then this one is the wide. I played around with the width. Short reverb, short decay. Right here in front and center, and then the wide one. Even though that's not what I'm saying, doesn't reflect this at all, but that's kind of what my initial principle was. And then once I started doing this, I figured out this is what I like the most. And to make room for everything, we got to make room for things. So if things are too much, I have this on here to roll things off or to take things out or whatever. So just playing around with this. High cut is usually if you're hearing too much presence of this, you can just cut it. If you're having too much low end that is stacking up, you can do that as well. And we have here a chorus to widen the vocals, but instead of I think on this one we decided to, instead of just I had a utility on here that just narrowed the vocals down and made them mono instead of stereo, took out all the width to really layer in that. But if it's just a stock chorus on here, you can actually just widen the vocals just with this. You can add your own flavors on there. You can see where it feels like, just to widen the vocals. And then you can play around with this rate to make it sound as natural as possible. And then the feedback as well. But just to widen, that's all it is. When I did Rosie's project, Dramatic, I put this digital vintage snare thingy on the vocals directly. And it immediately got me the effect that I was looking for on Rosie's vocals. And I thought, this is so freaking cool. But doing that, the remix for Dramatic, I learned so many things from doing that as well. Not only just time management, but how do I achieve a sound that I can, it's a song I could just hop on and just go crazy with. It's recorded differently in a different space. It has a different attitude and so many different properties to it, that I can really just go have fun and do whatever I wanted with it. And that's how I discovered this. The more you turn this vintage, the more noise it adds. That's why I just put it to subtle. You can make it mono for bass, but essentially I brought up that and then I just cut out the highs. We've got the double here. This is isotope free double.
Heart of darkness.
Pretty sick. I love this a lot, so I just took out the highs. You could put this depending on if your highs are coming in first or if you wanted to come in after. You can do that in series here. Moving on to this, the micro shifts. Oh my God. This was one of the best purchases I've ever gotten. You can get so many different cool sounds out of this. But I decided to put this one in mono instead. Because it sounded the best of a chorus. It really got me the sound that I was looking for. It was stacked down with everything else. Just crazy. And then yeah, couple different echoes and delays on here. Rolled off what I didn't need for the build up. Ducked it there. That's for the 8th. I had it in sync. Here's the tape reverse. Yeah, just kept cutting. And then I played around depending on what I wanted to be more present. And I'm still learning a lot about this stuff. Like in terms of a mix, do you want things to be more centered like a reverb, like just right here? Or do you want these to be way out of there in the spectrum to like carry out the vocal and really spread them out, you know, with the delays and stuff like that? I feel like the reverb is more transparent because you just hear the gas. If it was like a form or a substance or whatever, it'd be more gaseous or whatever, you know, just all this hiss and stuff. Only with the highs and stuff, if that even makes sense. But with this, you can actually hear the textures, and it's more present in the mix. So I brought down the stereo so it could just be right here. I don't know if there's any real science to that. I just liked it from where it was. And then I did the opposite here, you know, really wide on this one, right here in the center for those 8s. And then we got the stage right there, which I already showed. And then even after doing all this, I'm like, oh my God, I got the sounds, but I'm not fully there yet. And then I came back to this. I came back to our actual our vocal here for the double. I'm like, okay, this sounds really cool and unique, and it's up here present, but I want the vocals to do that now, and that's why I have an audio effect rect here. It's all of the same ones. I don't think I even touched all of them. I just added these two. Just fantastic plugins that really make it sound crazy and just out of this world. Yeah.
All your fans say you're just a little misfit.
But you can kind of hear how that kind of takes over. And if you notice the coloration here, these are our primary ones. I swapped out what needed to be swapped out. That's why you see different colors here. But traditionally, this was my purple was my main vocal take. And then once we get down here where the doubles are now louder, since this is our main vocal take, I just moved it down and I brought the doubles up there and swapped out what I needed to swap out. And there you go. I believe this was a blue before. These two were blue. That's where they're like that. But, oh, wait, one last thing. Sorry, the master. In retrospect, I should have put this with that up here. Oh, and I think I didn't show this, but yeah, just 25%. I should have put all the UAD so that this has the same consistency tone. But I just loved how subtle and how great this is in the mix. And I just used the same chain, and then it's just kind of worked around with like making it as sounding as good as possible. You know, I took 2 weeks from putting it all together and just sat with the mix, the master, and kept using my references to listen back and forth of how people were putting the vocals down. My reference was obviously, I made a playlist. I could actually probably put it down here as well. And just kept working with space. Even though the vocals sounded great with the instrumentals, they weren't really separate still. There was still so much stuff that we could like separate. And then I got this idea of like putting this mid-side EQ, learning about mid-side EQ and doing that. And I feel like putting the mid-side EQ even on this too, really brought out what I needed from the vocals, took out from the sides of the vocals, and just created this space between the instrument, the vocals up here, and then you have all your sides here. So this is what I thought sounded the best. Evan told me that sounded amazing, and he was the only person that told me it sounded amazing. And everything that I've been doing could probably all be wrong. I have no idea. I'm just trying to do what I can because I am broke, and I feel like I can take control because I have the tools in front of me. You know, if I have the time to do this, I do this every single day. As soon as I get off of work, or if I don't work, I literally just come in the studio and I start working on music. Now that the song's been out, I take maybe 1 or 2 weeks to not play music, not listen to music, nothing. I don't want to even look at music because this is a whole thing that takes so much time and effort to do. And if people don't listen to it, that's one thing. I care that I put it out, that I can come back and listen to it. That's what makes me the happiest. People listen to it, that's awesome. But I don't know. I don't get any compliments from this. People don't tell me if they like it or not. I know that it's out there, and I care that it's out there. In any case, Hopefully you found something useful in this, and if you found something that I could be doing better, please let me know. And if you have any questions, I can try to answer them for you. But Major Arcana, let me know what you think. Drop in the comments below. Thank you for watching. See you later, and bye-bye.